welcome to Recovery Report Live. I'm Dan Odess, president of GlobalPro, where we manage risk to recovery. We've managed more than $1 billion in recovery for thousands of community associations as well as business owners. We are your one-stop shop for all your insurance needs, whether it's replacing insurance or recovering from loss, or if you're planning a rebuilding project from the loss or damage that you've suffered, and you want some insight as to what the impacts of your decisions you make today may have on your renewal or your next loss. Let us know. Check us out online at globalpro.com, and always make sure that you hit the subscribe button, like us, follow us on all those social media platforms. We want to make sure that when we go live right here in the Griffin studio on the Recovery Report Live, that you get the notification so you can tune in and get the information you can use. Well, there's a lot going on the legislative level here in Florida. Again, being a bellwether state, it's very interesting to see where all things will end up. But when it comes to insurance reform, we're again seeing a lot of anti-consumer, anti-business, quite frankly, un-American legislation being proposed by groups trying to pad the pockets of insurance companies and their profits. Take care of those profits. Why? Well, it won't matter to you as a consumer because, quite frankly, they've gotten everything they've asked for in the last 2 years. Have you seen any reduction in the cost? Nope. Have you seen better products being sold to you as homeowners or business owners? Nope. The answer is no across the board. Because while we've all become price sensitive, they've been stripping the product of coverages, meaning you're paying a heck of a lot more for a lot less. Well, I'm bringing that conversation to the front and making sure that you all realize that it's not just an issue of price, it's also an issue of product. Make sure you start asking and looking closely at those products because it's not a one-size-fits-all and they're not all the same. And quite frankly, the product you're buying today at the exorbitant price that they're setting it at is nowhere close to the product that you were buying 5 to 10 years ago. The products then were tremendously better than what we have today. And they were already plagued with issues and concerns that I might have for you as a policyholder when buying certain products. But now, I mean, the concerns I may have had then are nothing compared to the concerns I have now for community associations and business owners that are buying insurance to comply with banking or lien holder obligations, or worse, as a community association, your obligation under your Florida statutes 711 and 718 to insure a property. Even if you don't insure to the total TIV, or maybe you do, either way, I can guarantee you that if you did take a hard look at those Florida statutes, there's very few, if any, community associations, particularly in the South Florida market, that are in compliance with their obligations. So think hard and long about your insurance and what you're buying and the market that we're in today. And consider the fact that this is the most friendly insurance market that we have seen in history. One-way Florida statutes, fee statutes with regards to attorney's fees, AOB restrictions, public adjusting laws. I mean, they are trying to actually pass public adjusting statutes that give a policyholder more than 30 days and 60 days if they don't provide an estimate to cancel the actual contracts. You can pour resources into helping a policyholder. And because they think that you should be done with your evaluation in 30 or 60 days, or maybe you changed your mind after 28 days of someone working their ass off for you to represent your interests, that they suddenly just don't want to, have that contract in place, or they got enough, they can cancel it and don't owe the public adjuster that's worked to serve the interest of a policyholder anything. Well, interestingly enough, though, the insurance companies get 90 days to pretty much do the same thing. So I'm scratching my head as to why I still owe them a premium if they can't pay me within 90 days. Maybe they should pass those laws. Maybe we should start passing laws that hold insurance companies more accountable because, quite frankly, these laws are certainly not doing that. I mean, we're not seeing any sort of reductions in costs. We're not seeing new insurance companies come into the market. We're seeing some of the largest brokers in the industry finally take an interest in participating at the legislative level because they are so frustrated that they can't get insurers into the market, and nothing that has been done has attracted any more new interest or reduced the cost. In fact, when a lot of this legislation was passed recently, passed in the past, I was going to say, a little alliteration there, it was said that not to expect any sort of reduction or changes in the market for 16, 18 months. Well, they campaigned to get your support, to convince you that policyholder advocates, whether attorneys or public adjusters or contractors, were the locusts or the bad people that are taking advantage of you when it was the insurance companies that they are protecting. And if you look at the Washington Post article, you look at the lawsuits, class actions that have been filed against insurance companies, and I can tell you, having handled tens of thousands of claims, billions of dollars in recovery, that most often when claims come into our office and the volume at which they do and the dollar values that you see them, that seldom do I see actual insurance companies doing the right thing the first time around. Now, that's not to say that it's not a byproduct of the multi-layer process they're going through or the antiquated systems that they're using or many other things that can't be fixed, because those things certainly can be fixed, but that's not going to get fixed by taking your rights away, your access as a consumer to representation. That's not going to get fixed. How is that going to fix those problems? I mean, there's the slowest adoption of insurtech going on. I mean, many insurtech executives who raised millions, if not billions of dollars, or had a $1 billion valuation, let me say that correctly, even expressed frustration in multiple articles about the slow adoption by insurance companies of their technology, which would help expedite and make the process more consumer-oriented and focused and better. And there's frustrations there. So it begs the question as to what we're actually adopting. What are these legislative efforts actually going to matter? Much of what I've read is not going to change a thing. In fact, it's actually going to make it more complicated, more expensive to represent the interests of an insured. Therefore, there's going to be less representatives, less people holding insurance companies accountable, because right now the legislature surely is not doing that. And I wish they were, because there's enough evidence and information out there to suggest that something needs to be done to hold insurance companies more accountable. And I actually think through accountability that you will see a reduction in cost and you will see more insurance companies play in this market. Why? Because it will also keep the consumer more honest about their claims, their losses, their damages, and professionals that represent insurers, because they realize that in a competitive market, you need to show value. You need to do more for the consumer, because otherwise, if your insurance company was actually working for you, they wouldn't seek out the assistance and help of a representative. And that's what's most often happened, not the story that everyone's being told about how people are just simply trying to profit from their insurance claims, and these attorneys are, because of the litigation, it's causing an increased rise. Well, show me the dollars. Prove it to me, because I call bullshit on all of it. I truly do. I don't think that just because there's an increase in litigation that there's suddenly that's representative of an increased cost in actual insurance. I don't believe it. I don't see how that adds up. In fact, some of the examples that were given are real examples of where an insurance company wrongfully denied a claim, an insured hired a public adjuster or an attorney, ultimately had to sue their insurance company. Their attorney got awarded hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars in attorney's fees, and the insured collected the money that they're entitled to. I see nothing wrong with that process. I see nothing wrong with the scales of justice holding these insurance companies accountable and penalizing them for not doing the right thing. You didn't have an opportunity to change their contract. In fact, that's all happens through the legislation as well, right? You didn't set the rules and guidelines around these things. You inherit them, and you're left with very few options and choices, even in a soft market, as to what you can afford and what products are available to you depending on the product. So again, it's a byproduct of the system that we're in, and if that system does not work for you, then why aren't you entitled to the full benefits and protections for that? It doesn't make any sense. It really doesn't add up for me. And one of those things that we see, in a growing issue we see, is around construction-related losses. And I know there's been a lot of talk about that, because you have the reserve studies and the 558 statutes in Florida, the reforms that they're most recently trying to change. And you had the community association industry, the property managers and the board members speak out against a lot of those reforms, saying that it was going to disadvantage community associations. And you saw the construction industry and most of the developers applaud it. Why? Because quite frankly, it did. It mitigated a lot of the time it took, or a lot of time that you had as a community association to identify your issues and to make those claims and do those things. But the reality of it is that the 558 statute, right, was really intended to mitigate the actual need to litigate, and gave you ultimately 4 different ways in which to resolve these things. And GlobalPro has been advocating on the front lines for this, that there was an alternative to suing each other, to dealing with litigation and the lawyers that created this cottage industry and the engineers that followed suit and have made millions of dollars selling a service that, quite frankly, almost always resulted in litigation. And that's not to say that the developers and the contractors on the other side, and in a way, didn't encourage it by putting up a strong defense, by being reluctant to work and negotiate and acknowledge where they did something wrong. But quite frankly, if insurance companies are most often defending and paying these things, as we have seen is true, In fact, I'm seeing so many articles written by lawyers right now talking about insurance. Almost none of them that are writing them or authoring them have real insurance experience. It's the irony. In fact, one said law firm, or actually two said law firms that have been teaching now a class and writing articles on issues related to 558, specifically about insurance. Our team here taught them classes over the last several years to their team of attorneys about how to use insurance, how to use the holding of case laws and common laws and those things to the advantage, how these policies are being interpreted or being managed by insurance companies, and why now's the opportunity to take advantage of that. GlobalPro was pioneering that, trying to mitigate some of this litigation by proving to these professionals that there was an alternative means to dealing with these things. So, again, full circle, obviously, GlobalPro has always been on the front lines. I enjoy competition. I enjoy the fact that law firms are trying to compete with us as adjusters, with our lawyers on staff that are adjusting claims on behalf of community associations newly turned over. I encourage it. Why? Because it makes it a lot easier for us to stand out and also brings more attention to what we're doing. So I'm encouraged by it. I'm glad that people are stepping up and realizing that there is an alternative way of doing this, just like we have been doing for more than a decade already here at GlobalPro, managing hundreds of millions of dollars of construction-related losses. I mean, hundreds of millions. One alone was almost $100 million recovery. So that's why I can factually state that we have done it. We have the experience. Before you contact a lawyer, before you go through that process, give us a call. Let us sit down with you and analyze and look at your situation. I really want to spend the time to break it down for you guys. You need to understand, as a community association manager, as a board member, there are alternative means to resolving these things without the need for litigation. It really has to do with the approach. And the fact of the matter is, most community association lawyers just don't understand it. And most construction certified attorneys, sadly, are still equipped or ready to fight, to drag you into court, to prove their value there. But sadly, that may not be the best arena for you. Perhaps it's in the field adjusting the claim with the insurance company that is defending and paying these claims. And I'm going to leave that short broadcast right there on that note, because I want you to think about that. If you're a community association, you're a servicer of that business, whether you're a mitigation contract and you're seeing or hearing community associations out there, promote this idea that there is an alternative. Why? Because these associations, sadly, are dipping into reserves to fund this litigation, are dipping into the reserves to fund these investigations that sadly are being managed and run by individuals that have profited for years off of pushing these things into the wrong arena, which is the litigation arena. These things need to get resolved. These need to be presented in a way that it attracts the attention of the insurance companies that are defending and paying these losses. And they're willing to do those things so as long as you can prove their obligations or trigger their obligations to do it. I mean, I'm out there talking directly to the developers, directly to the contractors, many of which we actually represent in claims that they suffered during the construction process. We know these buildings. We understand how they work, the means for which they put together. Those construction certified attorneys have probably never even been to a construction site, let alone your community association attorneys that peddle the idea that they can also help you and manage this process, or flip it off with one of their associates or partners that may do the construction side of it. But again, if they don't have a strong understanding of insurance, right? Insurance is the key part here. It's not going to really get you anywhere far quickly. And when it comes to insurance, quite frankly, just has a much shorter time period of typically, on average, will typically resolve itself much more quickly. There's just obligations under the Florida law, the policies, and everything else that would trigger those obligations, unlike what we see with the 558 process. So while I understand there's some haters and there's some people for these changes in legislation, I think at the end of the day, it's culminating into the realization that there is an alternative means, there's an alternative arena to getting these things done. And I believe that more work needs to be done in the field. More work needs to be done by insurance coverage experts like that here at GlobalPro. So if you found this broadcast useful, obviously, make sure that you hit that subscribe button, like us, follow us on all social media. We want to make sure that every single week you get the notification when we go live right here on the Recovery Report, because we are always delivering information you can use. Whether it's other industry professionals, advisors, consultants, competitors of ours. I mean, we welcome all walks of the industries to come in, join us, talk about hard-hitting issues that are important to business owners and community associations. That's what we do right here every single week on the Recovery Report Live. So join us, same time, same place, right here at 11 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. Again, hit the subscribe and like us and follow us right here on the Recovery Report Live.